Hello, everyone. My name is Gary Gomes. I'm here to talk with you about Vedic astrology, its relationship to you as an individual, and also its influence on world events or how it reflects world events. So, uh, if you want to reach me for a reading or for lessons, please do so. My number is 508 525 0001. Again, that's 508 525 0001. And I can be reached by text at that number. I can also be emailed at garygomesg@gmail.com. So I wanted to get right into it because I did get some pushback last week about how I felt about what was happening in Ukraine and also a little bit about the European Union. And I admit uh, that the projections for Ukraine may have been a bit pessimistic, but I don't think they were off base. So I'm going to share the charts. So, and I have one respondent say that the some Vedic astrologers use Capricorn rising for Ukraine. And according to the two official or the two rectified birth charts that I could find, one is an official AA Lois Rodden rated birth time. That's for an Aquarius rising. And the other one was taken from a gentleman called Sanjay Rath, and it was in my um, and I also know it was used in other astrological forecasts because when I looked up um, earlier charts, that was the chart I used. It was a Sagittarius rising. I can't find anybody who's using a Capricorn rising, but I did put up a hypothetical Capricorn rising chart in my analysis. And so I'm going to share all those with you using Kota Chakra Dasha, which is unusual, um, but it really does tend to indicate the good or bad fortunes of the country. In order to be fair, I'm going to show you Russia's Kota Chakra Dasha chart, which doesn't look much better, to be truthful. So let me just go to that right now. So nobody's going to get what they want out of this, okay? Just so let me just see if I can pull it up right now. All right, now this is Ukraine's chart. Let me stop the share. It's not showing up right now, and I don't want to have that chart format up there. I have nothing against it, but I'm really not. Uh, I know how to read this chart format. It's just not my preferred chart methodology. But this gives let me just see now. No, that would be, let me check something. Hold on a second. This will take a second. I may have made a mistake, which I fully admit. Okay, so there is one 4:30 p.m. Chart for the Ukraine for June 15th at 4:30 p.m. on hold it. No, this is for today. This isn't the bird chart. 6 p.m. So that's chart I have there is wrong. It is no 6 p.m. Yeah, 6 p.m. wouldn't be 2000, it would be I apologize. It would be 1800 hours. Don't know how I got that one up there. 1800 hours. Just take Kiev, and we'll go down and see what that looks like. Now, this gives the Sag rising as well, the Sagittarius rising as well. Now, the rising sign is pretty close to the end of um, of Sagittarius, but I'm not sure. So I'm not. The moon is in Capricorn, and the moon, especially in the Kota chakra chart, is extraordinarily important. Okay, uh, so that's the Swami Lord of the chart, basically the controller of the chart. So let's look over here. So it's a Moon Saturn conjunction in the second house in the Ukraine chart. So this is the chart I'm going to stick with because this is essentially the same chart I used last week. Okay, so I'm not going to go to the alternate charts because the alternate charts are essentially but I will acknowledge the Capricorn rising, the Capricorn because the, the moon is the most important planet in the Kota chakra uh, layout, and I'm going to change this over to those of you who are more familiar with South Indian format, and then I'll show you the Kota chakra chart. Okay, this will only take a second. Thank you for your patience. And I'm not at all offended if somebody questions the conclusion I came to. I am, however, upset by somebody calling me a Russian troll. That's not, you know, I mean, if you knew my background, you wouldn't really, God, that's the furthest I could be. As a matter of fact, I think this entire thing was just, uh, it was a serious miscalculation um, on the part of the West in terms of how to handle Ukraine and Russia and the ongoing conflict. Historically, um, there's no question that Putin, and it's been reported openly that Putin felt that the USSR or Russia as it became should not have ceded Ukraine independence. And that's based upon historical record that dates back before the Soviet Union was actually established. So, um, but we're going through a similar conflict, which I'll talk about right now in the United States, in which we're having people in a few people in southwestern United States talk about how California and Nevada and um, large parts, New Mexico and Arizona once belonged to Mexico, but that was about 200 years ago, okay, or just a little shy of 200 years ago. Um, so so essentially, we're having uh, um, a similar conflict, but Mexico obviously isn't invading the United States right now, but there's a similar mindset that's popping up around the world. So this is the increased nationalism we're seeing around the world. This is symptomatic of that. It's not as virulent in the United States as, believe it or not, it's not as virulent in the United States as it is in some other parts of the world. Um, but we'll get into that a bit later. Okay. So, so even with Trump as president, it's not as virulent in the United States as it is in other countries. So let's, discuss that in a little while. So you can see it's the same chart, only Sagittarius is in a fixed position down here in the lower left-hand side of the chart. Rahu's in the second house. Now, again, one thing you have to keep in mind is Rahu does do extremely well in Sagittarius. K2 does less well in Gemini, but it does okay in Gemini. But there is, and there is one school of thought um, that the nodes essentially, both nodes do well in this particular part of space. Both Rahu and Ketu both do very well in between the signs of Scorpio and Sagittarius. This is a position mainly held by Hard to Fold, but I've had friends who've been in Vedic astrology who've looked at it and said, that makes a certain amount of sense. Ken Johnson among them. So Ken's not very visible in Vedic astrology right now, but he edited a significant number of books and also the American College of the American Council of Vedic Astrology Journal. And he was proficient in Vedic and Western astrology. He was he was and is a very smart man. But you can see that Moon Saturn conjunction right here. So let's go to the Kota Chakra Dasha chart. So the moon is in Dhanishya Nakshatra. It's a musical nakshatra, okay, but it's also ruled by Mars indirectly, so it's also kind of a warlike nakshatra. Saturn's also in its own sign, so it's a rather stubborn nakshatra. Rahu is in Sagittarius, so although Rahu's very far away from the most warlike nakshatra, which is Mula, actually, or the most destructive nakshatra, is still influenced by that. And so let's go to the Kota chakra. I don't want to spend too much time micro analyzing this particular chart. And I think one of the things is if we have the Capricorn Mahadasha or the Capricorn rising, we have Mars in the ninth house, uh, which is essentially the house of allies or teachers, but we wouldn't have, but Mars would be in a tricky sign for it because Mars doesn't do particularly well in Virgo. And the planet most connected with its allies would be in the eighth house. So that would tend to indicate problems with allies. So it has had some problems with the United States, but it hasn't had problems with its European allies, not strictly speaking. Um, but the European allies are being put a little bit to the test, and some of them are continuing to back, some of them are pulling away just a little bit. So it's, so they haven't given up support to Ukraine. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that there's not as much, there's virtually no interest in sending troops to fight in Ukraine, in Europe. Okay. So I think that's something just to keep in the back of your heads as we're looking at this. Also, in order to raise its budgets or their budgets, we have a lot of countries who have had to raise their share of NATO expenses. And that actually led to a very unpopular move on the part of the current prime minister of Germany to call a session with the parties who had been voted out of office in order to um, provide funding and raise and deficit spend, which is essentially given Germany's history of or its relationship with inflation. It's very averse to doing any kind of deficit spending. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Now, the most important part of the Kota chakra chart is this section right here, the intersection. Okay, so right now we have Rahu in the chart. Um, Jupiter is the lord of Rahu. Saturn's the lord of the moon. It's um, trying to think of a good way to describe this. It's in the west. I'm looking for favorable nakshatras in this particular. So this is Hasta nakshatra, which is connected. Yes, Hasta nakshatra and Ardra nakshatra. So Hasta is a very skillful nakshatra. It's very adept at doing things, learning things. However, Ardra is a very destructive nakshatra. It leads to tears. Okay, it's a nakshatra which is ruled by Shiva, is considered to be very difficult for peace. It's very um, warlike. So if I look at the Kota chakra dasha and I look at planets like Jupiter passing over this particular sign and over in this particular nakshatra and over in natal Ketu, that doesn't give me a good feeling for Ukraine's chances of survival, despite the fact that they had that tremendously successful sneak attack on Russia. Okay, so despite that, if we look over here, there's a straight line, and Rahu can give temporary results, but not long-lasting results. So I think one of the things we want to look at is we want to look at lessons from Rahu Mahadashas, or people with prominent Rahus in their charts who thought they were invincible, and all of a sudden they collapsed. And um, it's it's not good. Germany or uh, the leader of Germany in World War II, I can't say his name on YouTube, had Rahu in the ninth house. He lost everything during a Rahu Mah. He gained a lot during a Rahu Mahadasha, but he lost everything in a Rahu Mahadasha. And I'm not equating Zelensky to this individual. Okay, that's not the idea. I'm just saying it gives temporary successes. Okay, and if I'm looking at the Kodesh and Saturn's keeping up the wall, so Saturn's enabling at in this particular circle, we, which is one of the protectors of of the chart. It's one of the protectors of the center. It has it does have some strengths. So I may have been overly pessimistic in saying that I think that we're going to see some problems with um, with Ukraine surviving over the next month and a half. I still think it's in danger, if I'm quite honest, because K2 is passing, Rahu is passing over the second house from the moon in the Ukraine chart, which is not a good transit. Saturn just left that sign, so Ukraine just left its 7.5 year period of Saturn, but it's still within that. And the Ukraine moon is in conjunction with Saturn, which will make it popular, but doesn't necessarily mean it won't have a miserable existence. Okay, so I'm not saying that to be negative. I'm just saying that to be honest with you. Um, if I'm looking, he's in, so the country's in a moon subperiod right now. Oh, sorry. Let me get out of that. Let me see if I can stop the share and start up again. Sorry about that, folks. Okay, so it's up again. Thank you for your patience. I want to see what level this goes to. So between May 14th and July 28th, um, Ukraine has been in this Rahu subperiod, which will give essentially a more prominent position or a more optimistic position um, for them. Okay. After July 28th will really be when the determination will be as to how much longer Ukraine will be able to hold out. Um, the problem I'm seeing with this chart is that if there have been successes after and during a Rahu subperiod, they're either encapsulated or incorporated during a Jupiter subperiod or they're taken away. Now, typically, what I've seen happen in charts where you have a cluster of planets in any sign, that tends to be rather difficult for that individual or for that country. Okay. So clusters of planets, especially more than three planets, tend to be detrimental. Okay. It's what's called a Sannyasin combination. Okay. So this can either mean a surrender or um, trying to think, or a loss. Okay. So I'm saying this without prejudice. I'm not really particularly crazy to see Ukraine go away. I don't think it will go away now that I look at it more carefully, but I think it will be reduced. And I think one of the things that happens when you do an attack like that, Russia's had attacks like that in its history. Japan actually attacked Russia that way in oh gosh, if maybe about I want to say around 30 years before they attacked the United States that way. And interestingly enough, Teddy Roosevelt had praised the Japanese for what they did. So it's interesting what happens. So it was happening to somebody you don't like, then geez, it's you know, it's it's great for you, but it's not so good for the country it's happening to. And that country does tend to hold on to a vendetta. Now, this is Russia's chart from the best information I have available. This was when it was founded. Now, again, here we go back to the Kota chakra chart, and you just see now reports, full reports. Sorry, folks, this is a little bit taking a little bit longer than I expected it to. Kota chakra. We're back to Kota chakra again. So again, Rahu is in this chart is Ketu's in Ardra, or Ketu's next to Ardra Nakshatra. But Russia is in, sorry, let me get this chart up where I want it to be. And Russia is in a moon Mahadasha. It's in a moon Saturn period. So Ketu and Rahu are both influencing the inner circle. So I said before, Rahu is was was not well placed in the Ukraine chart. And actually, I do believe that. Russia has the same sign placements as um, as Ukraine does for Rahu and Ketu. But Ketu is in, I gotta fix this. Ketu is in Russia's 12th house. And while that can give temporary losses, at least from the chart, it also makes it substantially more stubborn than Ukraine is. And if we're looking at the Mahadasha right now, that Russia is in a moon Mahadasha. Now, one of the important things to keep in mind about this moon Mahadasha is moon is waning, which is normally a bad sign for a chart, but it's in the same sign with Jupiter. Ukraine's moon is in the same sign with Saturn. If you have a moon Jupiter conjunction, it's much more advantageous than a moon Saturn conjunction. Okay. And Russia has just gone through this moon Saturn period. It'll come into a moon Mercury period in after August 12th of 2026, and let's see what the levels are out here. Is in a moon Saturn Mercury period right now. After August 6th, again, kind of a pivotal date for both these charts. Venus is in the fourth house in this chart. Venus typically gives victory in war. The Venus subperiods typically give victory in war. That's not an absolute, but that's what I've observed through many, many, many charts. Okay. So is it possible this conflict will go on beyond August 6th? Yeah, probably through next February, but I think you'll start to see just because Rahu's in a more dominant or eastward moving position than K2 is in this chart. I don't think Ukraine will give up easily. So you may see this lasting for another 6 months or so. And the eclipse in September will occur um, in the ninth house of the Ukrainian chart and in the second house of the Russia chart. So the eclipse will tend to, so the eclipse could hurt either of them. I'm tending to think it'll tend to take away more support from the Ukrainians. Okay. It may give more damage to the Russians, but I'm just thinking that between August 6th and November 11th, um, you'll see what I would call, if not a conclusion, maybe a winding down of the war. And I'm really not, again, I have to make this clear. I'm not on Russia's side. It's just that Russia has a better chart at this particular point in time. It has, now again, it's mixed, okay? It's definitely mixed. Uh, the Varnado Lagna, which is the company that it keeps, is in this moon sign. The moon sign is Lord is the sun. That's the Swami planet for the chart. The moon sign for um, Ukraine is Saturn. Sun always beats Saturn, although Saturn may drag it down or delay things, but Sun always beats Saturn in conflicts because it's really the strongest. Apart from Rahu and Ketu, it's the strongest entity in the astrology chart. That's just fact. So, am I looking at this through my prism? Yes, definitely. I'm not at all saying that I have no prejudices in this, but the prejudices are astrological prejudices. I've never seen a Moon Saturn conjunction, uh, even if Saturn's in its own sign, beat a Leo, let's say, a Leo rising. So could I be wrong about this? Yeah, but we're still kind of underestimating how many resources Russia still has. So even if all those planes were knocked out, that's not the end of Russia's resources. Okay. So again, like I said, and I think you may have seen over the past couple of weeks that Russia essentially waged the heaviest drone strikes they ever raised against Kyiv. Now, again, from the reports we've heard, those drone strikes didn't do much damage. Okay, but I don't. I think an action like that will really only make Russia more stubborn. Okay, it won't discourage them. It won't cause a popular uprising. Although, if I'm honest, every ruler is in danger to some extent because of K2 passing through Leo in the chart. And we're going to see a lot of major disruptions in politics. We're already seeing them, as a matter of fact. So some of you may be familiar with the um, assassination in Minnesota last night. That was a horrible thing, and just a really sad thing to see. Um, and Also, we have the ongoing unrest. I'm not going to call them riots. I'm not going to call them uprisings. I'm not going to call them anything because it'll be misinterpreted by people who are coming in or who are listening. But the civil disturbances, as I was saying back a few months ago, are very reminiscent of what happened in the United States in the late 1960s, early 19 up to the early 1970s. So I think the parallels, the historical and planetary parallels, are definitely there. So I think both sides need to come together um, and sort of stop this. But there also has to be some realization that um, a government can't maintain itself if I'm trying to think of a delicate way to put this. If there are ongoing demonstrations and, let's be honest, looting going on and um, attacks on federal agents or on state agents. And again, just to be clear, this isn't only happening in the United States. Okay, so just be clear. I really wish people would look around the world because there are demonstrations similar to this, maybe not as difficult, but similar to this happening all through Europe, all through Asia, and the ideological lines between nationalism and internationalism are being drawn very um, deliberately right now. And both sides have an agenda. I can't look and say this side is is right or this side is wrong. That's not my position. That's not my job as an astrologer. Okay. So let's look at the chart for the week coming up. So just last night we had a political assassination take place in Minnesota. Um, a lot of people have theories as to what caused the assassination. Um, the fellow who engaged in the assassination attempt had King's Day posters in his card, um, but I can't draw any definitive conclusions about that. Um, we have Mercury in, so let's look at the chart in question. We have Mercury ruling the first house in the 10th house, so there'll be a lot of focus on government over the next week. Mars and K2 will be in the 12th house. There will be focus on violence, okay, and loss of property over the next week or so. Definitely over the next week or so, but I would say over the next month or so. Um, and again, keep in mind, when I say these things, I'm not trying to avoid expressing my feelings for this. I'm trying not to let my feelings about this interject into my analysis. I'm trying to maintain as be as impartial as I possibly can be. So, and Mars is aspecting Saturn, so that will make essentially that's where all the purity emphasis is coming from. So we have Musk saying the bill is garbage because it doesn't cut funding. We have Democrats um, mobilizing to um, into no compromise positions with the Republicans. We have Republicans who don't want to compromise with the Democrats. And this is true no matter which country you go to. This is true. There's this insistence, this what I would call almost insane assistance because of the Mars K2 conjunction on purity, on getting your own way, absolutely getting your own way, and not really listening to the other side. And Mars is aspecting Saturn, so that will hit us. This is the United States' fourth house, but it's also the sign of beliefs is Pisces. So we're really not going to get out of this kind of a situation for at least 4 months. Okay. The main reason I'm saying that is because Mars won't move into Libra until really the fall at the earliest. And that Mars Saturn aspect right now and the Mars Saturn aspect will continue throughout the summertime. So I'm expecting the demonstrations and the governmental reaction to be strong throughout the next month, month and a half. And that's true of every country, not just the United States. So, like I said, I'd encourage you to look at world news as opposed to just looking at what's happening in the United States and think this is the only place it's happening. It's not. All right. So, the other thing is you have, so we had that thought back in the 1960s that we have all these riots in the United States and they're not happening in other countries when they were happening in France, in Germany, there were demonstrations in the UK, there were demonstrations around the world. So this was not just one incident happening. Ours over here, the United States will probably be the first one to suppress it. I hope that the government doesn't go too far in its effort to shut these down. We also have what I would call warlike states starting to emerge. Warlike states doesn't mean countries that are warlike mindsets. So we had Israel bomb Iran last week. That's particularly troubling because it's essentially um, giving Iran an excuse to attack. It's giving Iran an excuse to um, expand the war, and Israel, in fact, has expanded the war, but the defense on the Israelis' part will be is that they've already been attacked by Iran. So I'm not I'm not an expert on Middle Eastern politics, nor do I pretend to be. Um, but that's the rationale that I heard being used. We have Rahu in the sixth house. Well, we have some economic problems. One, two, three, four in the fifth house. I'm looking at the second house. Venus is Lord of the second house. It's in the eighth house. So maybe some minor economic problems for about 2 weeks. And then you'll see some disruptions to world markets in the next month. And after that, a relative calming down or a relative return to uh, some sanity, some predictability. Moon is in Capricorn, so everybody's trying to focus on business matters. But again, Mars aspecting Saturn is going to influence that Capricorn moon. And as I said before, people's emotions are kind of taught right now. Um, it's probably not a good time to go on long term, or on probably not a good time to travel. You'll see a lot of appliances breaking down or needing repairs because of the Mars K2 conjunction. And so just prepare yourself for that. That's sort of like um, not necessarily a silly aspect of it, but that's one of the things I've noticed that happens whenever Mars and K2 get together. A lot of appliance and car repairs. Okay. Saturn, it will tend to ramp up people's energy a little bit. Mars aspecting Saturn will tend to ramp up people's energy a little bit. And there'll be a lot of discussion with this combination. But again, one of the positive things in this chart is the Sun, which is Lord of the 12th house, Jupiter, and Mercury are all in conjunction with what's called the yogi point in the chart, right here, this little guy. And you'll start to see some increases in financial prosperity before the end of the month. Okay. So, as a matter of fact, probably within a couple of weeks. So, I wouldn't worry that much about the economy. I don't think it's going to be that bad. Um, I don't think we're going to see a great deal of domestic imprisonment. But the typical boundaries of what's done and what's not being done, and this is true on both sides of the aisle. This isn't true just of the Republicans. This is true of the Democrats as well. So acceptable behavior from both sides of the aisle is going out the window. So that'll probably persist for another, at least until the fall. Um, I know some folks have spoken about um, Trump not completing his term, or Trump being thrown out of office before he can complete his term, or being um, assassinated, uh, or declared incompetent, and Vance taking over as president, or maybe having a major medical issue and Vance taking over as president. While that's still possible, to me it seems remote. And it's mainly because we have um, Trump's rising sign, which is this one, has uh, um, a Raj Yoga in it right now with the Mars K2 conjunction. So actually, at least from this chart, at least for the next month or so, he'll be pretty safe. There may be attempts on his life. There may be physical episodes, but this is really not. It's a difficult combination, but it's not necessarily an elimination of him from office. Um, so let's look at the actual individual charts for this week. Um, I'm not taking back anything I said. By the way, I'm not taking anything back I said about the European Union. I think the European Union is really acting very, just trying to think of a good way to put it that's accurate. They're interfering in a lot of local elections. They're either directly or through their surrogates. Um, that doesn't bode well for them in terms of keeping the team together. I think I think we're going to have to see some major revisions or major reorganizations for the EU to survive more than 5 years. Again, keep something in mind. This is um, not etched in stone. World circumstances may conspire to make them more powerful, but right now, um, they're they've been reliant to a very large extent on trade with China. China is just recovering from an economic shambles or an economic slowdown. They're still a powerful economy, don't get me wrong, but they've encountered some really um, disappointing news. China is doesn't to me doesn't look healthy. Now that could that change in a year or two? Definitely. But it doesn't look financially healthy to me, or it looks much more inconsistent than it did during the past 20 years or so. Um, the other thing is that the small increase the United States has asked them to make to their defense budgets is producing measurable strain on their economies already. So is it enough to bust their economies? I don't think so, and I don't think that's the intent of why that's being done. But at the same time, that and the increased demands on most countries in terms of providing services to immigrants will tax the resources of many European countries. So I, both the astrological map, which is not good, I looked at it last week, and also what I'm seeing in different parts. Eastern Europe tends to be the most um, independent-minded part of the European Union. So essentially, the belt of countries, but also the belt of countries from basically from Bulgaria, uh, Romania, those countries, Greece, um, and but also there are signs of fractures occurring in France, in Germany. UK is already bailed out of the Union, Italy. So, so these are Germany is the major powerhouse in Europe in terms of the economy. Um, and France is also a major industrial power in Europe. But it's the European Union's combined uh, economy that makes them serious rivals, or even a bigger economy than the United States. If that fractures, they'll fight, um, they'll be in trouble in terms of being able to fulfill the commitments to their people. Canada is going through what I would call an ongoing uh, electional crisis. We'll see how that turns out. Um, but a lot of these structures, Brazil, Argentina, Peru, a lot of the African countries are going through a great deal, and a lot of the Asian countries are going through a great deal of strife right now. So again, this is not, number one, this isn't caused by the United States because these were problems which were developing before President Trump was elected. And a lot of them were outgrowths of the COVID epidemic and also mass migration caused by multiple wars and conflicts in different parts of the world. So all these things have led us to this point where um, where a lot of countries are unhappy with their leaders. A lot of countries want to see change, but they don't know which direction to, in which to travel to get the change they need. So that's why this map is going to be screwed up for at least another year and a half because of K2 and Leo, and it'll be under a magnifying glass over the next few months, especially right now, but especially between September and I would say all the way until next um, April or May. Okay. So when the next eclipse occurs, and I'll talk about that in a future broadcast, you'll see a lot of changes happening to countries. So, but again, not to be pessimistic, Venus is in Aries. That's actually a good sign. Venus is independent right now. Um, it's ruled by Mars, so it does feed into that anger. Um, but we do have a Sun-Jupiter conjunction. This will make us more religious, which I'm not sure is a good or a bad thing. More dogmatic. Um, and Capricorn, at least Moon being in Capricorn, will make us more practical. So, but again, like I said, don't be surprised if you see a lot of conflicts over the next couple of months. Okay. So let's go to the actual week by week charts. Okay. So, and I'll make these shorter than I normally do. Aries has Venus in the first house, so it's a little bit, sexual drive is a little stronger than normal, but also anxiety and also some worry about it. Um, Sun, Jupiter, and Mercury are in the third house in this chart, so that's good for communications, but again, it will largely be propagandized communications because of Sun and Jupiter coming together. We're not going to hear the right news coming out of either set of individuals. The first lord is in the fifth. That's good for financial growth and also for independence. And let's see now, the moon is over here in the 10th house. So some Aries may experience change in career or new career opportunities. Uh, some short-term financial gains, but a lot of that will be spent on responsibilities. So this is April 15th to May 15th. May 15th to June 15th is Taurus. Taurus has Venus in the 12th house, which is usually a good indicator for being able to save money. And the first house is surrounded by benefics. Okay, so that's good. The sun isn't exactly a benefic, but the outer planets, Jupiter and Mercury are. By the way, I just did one of this to insert that I read Sanjay Rath's analysis. Uh, and Sanjay back in 2022 said Ukraine would lose some land. So it's not often that I don't always find myself on the opposite side of Sanjay, but his analysis in that particular chart looked pretty spot on to me. So, um, that's the very least we can expect as an outcome of this conflict. So I apologize for inserting that there. I should have said that earlier. Um, Taurus has, so Taurus, May 15th to June 15th, Venus and Jupiter are on both sides. Um, Mars is in the fourth house. So again, um, more home repairs for this particular sign. Um, Change in luck. Luck will improve, some disappointment in career, and renewed obligations because of friends or people who oppose you. For Gemini, this is June 15th through July 15th. Gemini has Sun, Jupiter, and Mercury in the first house. It's the third house lord with the seventh, 10th, first, and fourth house lords. So it forms a kind of a Raj Yoga in the chart. Um, the presence of the third house lord weakens that a little bit, but also makes us more uh, strong-willed, more um, independent-minded. This holds true for rising sign Gemini or moon sign Gemini. And overall, this sign will become more aggressive, more interested in increasing his financial fortunes. Moon is in Capricorn, not a bad placement. If the moon's in Capricorn for this chart, it can give unexpected boosts in income. A lot of work, though. And again, the feeling that luck is really not quite what you want it to be. But again, some financial gains do show up for this particular sign, which has had a tough time with it over the past few months. For Cancer, Cancer's July 15th to August 15th. Mars and K2 are in the second house will make the sign a little bit angrier than normal, a little bit more difficult to deal with than normal. Moon is in the seventh house. Not a bad placement. This gives this sign more business savvy, more business sense. Saturn's in the ninth house, good for financial gain. Rahu's in the eighth house. You may have to watch out for individuals trying to either besmirch your reputation or attack you from without you noticing it. And Sun and Jupiter and Mercury are in the 12th house. Again, this is not necessarily a bad combination. It can mean income from overseas, financial gains from overseas, some travel opportunities. So this is not necessarily a bad placement. Good for luck overall. For Leo, this is, and one more thing I want to mention about Cancer. The Sri Lagna is a point in space connected with financial gain, so that's in the first house, so that's good. That's good for financial gain. For Leo, which is August 15th to September 15th, Mars and K2 are in the first house. This creates, as I've said before, a Raj Yoga, a very powerful Raj Yoga for this particular sign. Um, there are indications that if somebody gets in your way, they won't last very long. Sun and Jupiter are in the 11th house along with Mercury, so good for financial gains and any kinds of gains of prestige. Um, the Lord of, I'm sorry, Venus is in the ninth house, so good for career luck, good for relationships with bosses. And Saturn is in the eighth house, so this tends to indicate some kind of difficulty with people plotting behind the scenes to either embarrass you or depose you from your position. Rahu's in the seventh house, so there'll be open enemies now as opposed to behind the scenes enemies. Moon is in the sixth, not a bad placement. It will tend to minimize losses for the sign. Let's go on to Virgo. Virgo is between September 15th and October 15th. Um, the Lord of Virgo is in the 10th house, so there's a lot of focus on career life. Mars is the third Lord in the 12th house, so this indicates um, some delays or some denial of rental property or even home issues. For the moon is in the fifth house, children will tend to do better this week. Um, Saturn's in the seventh house. Relationship life will seem kind of dull and predictable, but you'll have a lot of responsibility connected with relationship life. And Venus, unexpected financial gains from unusual sources. But the best thing about this chart is work life or career life starts to become center focus again. For Libra, this is October 15th to November 15th. Also true for Libra Ascendant or Libra Moon. Um, you have Venus in the seventh house, so this will increase sexual desire for this sign. It will increase relationship opportunities. A lot of people will like this sign from a romantic perspective. Moon is in the fourth house. A lot of work done from home, a lot of financial gains due to work. Rahu's in the fifth. Good for unconventional artistic pursuits, creative endeavors, and Saturn's in the sixth house. This tends to give ability to succeed at one's goals, but not without some opposition. Sun, Jupiter, and Mercury are in the ninth house. That's a lucky placement for this particular chart because you'll see a lot of financial gains this week. For Scorpio, Scorpio has Mars in the 10th house. That's a good placement. So there's a lot of career orientation. K2 is sometimes viewed as the co-ruler of Scorpio. So you actually have two Scorpio planets in the 10th house of career. So career life should actually increase. Moon is in the, let me just check something. Moon is in the fifth, is in the third house. So changeable desires. Rahu is in the fourth. A lot of anxiety or difficulty with home life, and also some mechanical threats. Saturn's in the fifth house. Children will have a little bit of a difficult time of it right now. Venus is in the sixth house. Um, Wife or relationship partner in general will tend to spend too much, although relationship life is protected and there will be unexpected gains from the government or from business as well from this chart. So this is not a bad week for Scorpio. Um, Sagittarius has Moon in the second house, so increase of financial gains. Rahu's in the third, strong desire or ambitions to succeed. Saturn's in no, Rahu's in the second, so strong ability to gain money or increase money. Or, no, I'm sorry, back to Sagittarius. I got lost there for a second. Sagittarius Lord is in the seventh house. It's with Sun, Jupiter, and Mercury. This forms a kind of a positive combination for this particular chart. So it will give more business partnerships, more dealing with allies and friends, and maybe even some conflicts with them. Moon is in the second house, increase in financial assets. Rahu's in the third, more desire to go after what it wants, at least at this particular time. And we have Venus in the fourth house, so home life should be relatively easy or calm. Jupiter's in the sixth house, along with Sun, Jupiter, and Mercury. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, Jupiter's, we already discussed that. I'm getting going ahead to Capricorn. Mars and K2 are in, Venus is in the fifth house, so good possibility of romantic encounters. Although there may be too many to handle. Mars is with K2 in the ninth house, so overall good for luck for this particular rising sign. Although it will experience some conflicts or some difficulties. For Capricorn, now I can go into Capricorn. The seventh Lord is in the first house, along with the Gati Lugna, which indicates this sign will gain some fame through career or through business partnerships this month. Rahu is in the second house. This is actually a good placement for financial gain, financial strength. Um, Saturn's in the third house, so a lot more ambition. This sign will find itself much more aggressively pursuing its goals. Um, Venus is in the fourth house. Again, some calmness at home is indicated. Jupiter's in the sixth house. along with Mercury. Um, so again, although there are financial gains, they will be achieved with some difficulty. Mars is in the eighth house, definitely not a good time for new relationships for Capricorn, rising sun or moon. And let's see now, and that's it for that chart, part of the chart. Aquarius has Rahu in it. This is why we're having all the air catastrophes, okay? Over the past couple of years, we had another combination for air catastrophes, which was uh, Saturn in Aquarius. And I've noticed anecdotally that whenever Aquarius is afflicted, that we have a lot of disasters connected with technology or with transportation. So Rahu will tend to, although Rahu is in its own sign, technically, it's still a malefic planet, so it will increase, especially over the next month or so, because of Mars aspect on Rahu. You'll see an increase in vehicular dangers, flying dangers, those kinds of things. Even sea travel dangers because of Saturn in the second house. Venus is in the third house. This isn't a bad combination. Makes this sign a little bit um, sexually desirous. Jupiter's in the fifth house, so good potential for love affairs or romantic involvements. Um, Children will tend to play um, less of a role in this chart up until um, I would say around the middle of the month, and then they'll become important parts of the chart. And this sign will find itself dwelling a great deal upon its children. A lot of fights or arguments with a relationship partner. That's just the way it's going to be over the next month or month and a half. Moon is in the 12th house, not a bad placement. So some difficulties with sleep, and also some difficulties with awakening, at least from the chart. Saturn, this is for Pisces. This is March 15th through April 15th. And this and Saturn's in the first house in Pisces. So this will mean justice for people who've violated laws or difficulties. And um, Venus is in the third house, tends to give some sense of triumph or ability to succeed in the chart. Venus is in the second house, excuse me. So it should be good for financial blessings. Just go back down to just go back down around them. We're not going to see great many planets. Moon is in the 11th house. That's generally good for, you do have to be careful about accidents, so, and also injuries to the internal organs for this sign for Pisces. And Moon is in the 11th house for Pisces. Good for financial gain, good for temporary financial gain, but a lot of expenditures. So Pisces, just to recap, a lot of pressure, a lot more financial desire. Home life should be busy but calm. Um, Arguments with spouse, also some health conditions you should pay attention to, especially if they're in the um, intestines and also the kidneys. And finally, gains of friends, but also financial hardships. So let's go to the map of the world and we'll wrap it up. All right. So we have Mercury and the Jupiter line going over Hawaii and going over Alaska. So you're going to see some governmental interference over there. there's a moon line, a moon Venus Mars line encompassing really almost all of California, uh, Arizona, northern Mexico, and Utah, and the entire West Coast. So what does that mean in plain English? Well, we'll probably still see troops there in that part of the country for over the next, I would say, week to 2 weeks, um, and maybe longer. Um, the issue I've spoken about before about Alberta threatening to secede from Canada, Alberta, and I believe Saskatchewan as well. Um, that'll continue. That fight, that argument will continue in Canada for at least a few months. Um, Mars is running through Mexico, but it's not really close to Mexico City. But I think you'll see a lot of violence in Mexico as well over the next few weeks. Here we have a descending Rahu line going over Ohio, North Carolina, I'm sorry, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and into Cuba and into Panama. So there will be, and down into Ecuador, Peru, and lightly touching upon Chile. So this will give some governmental scandals in those parts of the world. Also in Canada, because this is Ottawa. This is close to Ottawa. Okay. There's a Sun-Jupiter line taking place over here. So you will see governmental authority being undercut by courts. The same is true in Canada, by the way, as is happening in the United States. So so um, the judge in Canada is essentially um, requiring new elections is um, I don't know if it's ever happened before, but it does indicate yeah, I won't say an attack, but a crimping of administrative authority. And there's a Jupiter line going over the Dominican Republic and over Venezuela. So we can expect some um, judicial issues and maybe even some financial issues going down all the way into Bolivia and Argentina. There's a Mercury line. We'll be hearing a lot more about Brazil, Guyana, and Uruguay over the next few weeks. There's a Venus line just on the tip of Brazil that usually gives heavy rainfalls. Let's see, not unusual for Brazil. There's a moon line going through Iceland. So Iceland's in relatively stable shape right now, but there can be some shifts in its government. Um, there's what line is that? Sorry. There's a Mars line running through Ireland. There have recently been some demonstrations in Ireland, some rather forceful demonstrations. So that's something to keep an eye on. Um, and again, there are demonstrations in England going on right now as well. But Ireland, there was at least one individual who subscribes to this website said that there was um, a law proposed in which demonstrators could be thrown into jail for 10 years. I'm not sure about the details of the law, but the courts threw it out. So, again, like I said, if you think this is really only happening in the United States, you're not paying attention to the rest of the world. The rest of the world is it's happening. If it's happening here, it's happening everywhere. Our country isn't singled out for any special consideration by God in terms of punishing our karma or rewarding it. Every country faces the same situation, and Portugal has that particular type of situation going on right now. For Portugal and Ireland have that kind of situation going on right now. They're very disrupted countries. Same is true in the Ivory Coast and down into uh, so, the southwestern horn of um, of Africa. And let's see now, there is a Jupiter line and a Sun line and a Mercury line heading over Sudan, parts of Nigeria, and other other areas. Um, there's a so I would look for these areas for fights, arguments, discussions, and I would look for these areas for political scandals or political disruption all the way through here. And these areas for new laws um, or new exercise of governmental authority. Ukraine is currently has a sun line over it and a little bit of a Jupiter line over it. And there's a Mercury line running through Saudi Arabia and down through Central Africa, down through Angola into South Africa. So there has been a lot of attention paid to South Africa lately, mainly because of uh, allegations that black population is being targeted, and they're asking for sanctuary in the United States. Um, but there are also other parties on there who want those individuals prosecuted for other reasons. Um, there's a Mercury line running up through Saudi Arabia, down through um, Ethiopia, Eritrea, and down to South Africa. So again, we're going to be hearing a lot of news about that region of the world, and also about Russia. There's a Venus line running through Russia, down through Iran. So if we're looking at a Sun-Jupiter line running through Israel and a Jupiter and Venus line running through Iran, this can indicate payback for the rocket attacks, maybe even more aggressive action. Okay. And let's see now. Venus is, we already spoke about Venus running through Iran. Um, Mars is running through India, still some threat of war in India. I don't think it'll manifest, but still some threat. And also, I'm sorry, there's a moon line there, but there's a Mars line in over the Bengali region of India. Whoops, didn't want to do. I can work with this though. Finally, no, I want to shrink it down just a little bit. Sorry, it's a little better. So that is a moon line, not a Mars line. That was where I made my mistake before. There's a Rahu line running up through China, um, Thailand. So definitely some Malay, definitely some government scandals. Indonesia happened, all those areas, all the way through Borneo, um, and this part of China right here. Some scandals, especially about work conditions, are emerging. Let's see now. We have Mercury running through Borneo. Sorry, not Phil. Oh, I'm sorry. It is the Philippines. My apologies. The Philippines and up next to Korea. So we're going to be hearing a lot more about the new Korean government. And let's see now. There's a Venus line running through Japan. That's relatively innocuous, and also running through New Guinea and Australia. Australia's been having some problems as well, and so has New Zealand. There's apparently a new political scandal occurring in New Zealand, and some of which has legal ramifications connected with it. So we'll see how that develops. I'll try to find out some more about that as I can. So that's it for this week. Uh, I would pay close attention to the west coast of the United States, the east coast of the United States, all the way down through Chile and all the way down through Chile in South America. Um, and I pay really close attention to this area right here in Europe, essentially all the way pretty much the entire boundaries of Europe, because it looks like there's going to be some misery in Europe and in Northern Africa over the next week. Finally, we have some problems in India, although not as severe as they were, and also in Southeast Asia, especially around China and Vietnam and Thailand. Okay, so that's it for me for this week. I hope you guys have a great week. Um, don't worry about what's going to happen. Worry about living your life right now. Just, you know, things always look worse than they really are. Um, and I was watching a professor speak on TV, and a lot of folks, changes happen in the United States, and we tend to overreact. Okay, so that's just been my experience. Um, there may be or may not be a constitutional crisis in the United States. Most people leave administrations pretty much unscathed. So I see no reason to believe this will be the situation will be any different over the next 4 years than it has been over the previous 4 years. I could be wrong. This could be a big revolutionary war, but I've heard that a lot of the metrics that are being used to evaluate that I just don't agree with. And that yes, this will be a disruptive time for the country, but it'll be disruptive in the same way the period between roughly 1890 and 1916 will be or had been. Okay, so it's not a revolution, it's not a civil war, it's um, basically an attempt at restructuring, which will upset some people and please others. And you'll see us swing back because we're still not out of this Rahu major planetary period for quite a few more years. But this is the nature of Rahu. It's really designed to make you afraid. And I just wouldn't play into that. Okay? So I love you all. Thank you so much for putting up with me for this long. I hope this helps you out in the coming week and helps you understand what's going on around the world. I couldn't mention every major story that was happening around the world. It would be impossible for me to do this, at least, especially in a weekly broadcast. But again, like I said, expect more disruption this summertime, maybe all the way until next spring, but we'll survive it all. Okay, folks? Of that, I'm sure. Okay. Take care of yourselves personally. Uh, Still strive to realize your dreams. You can still do that. Nothing's stopping you from doing that. Okay. Any halts you put on yourself are purely halts of your own making. Don't wait. Don't say I have to wait until this situation straightened out. That's not the answer to your problems. Okay. Waiting is essentially doing nothing. Sometimes sometimes you have no choice. You must do nothing. However, this is not one of those times. And if you can fulfill your positive ambitions for the safety of your family, your success in life, and also for um, your overall security, those are good things to focus on right now. Don't be afraid. Fear is not a useful emotion. There may be such a thing as caution being useful, but fear is not useful. Okay? All right, take my word for it. Okay? Thanks a lot, folks, and have a great week. And again, I love you all. Thanks for watching.